Gani. Welcome to Ubiquity for the love of each other. We are so excited to celebrate 52 years of one of the greatest organizations that was founded on the campus of Howard University. I am Camille Lourde Wyatt, your co-host, and we're joined also by Ada Babineaux.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we actually came over and joined Ubiquity in 1985. So that's quite a ways from 73. But we're so happy today to bring on some of the founders, the folks who actually put the framework down. Hey guys, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are.
¿Cómo está?
Bien. So you all started in Swahili, so you talking about some como está? It was Habari Gani, my brother. Gani. So we have Don Temple, one of the masterminds who actually was pulling everybody together, brainstorming about starting something new on Howard's campus. We have very white BreDell, and we have Sullivan Johnson, Sully. So welcome you all. Thank you for coming. There was a group of how many of you all? Can you remember how many came on when you all first started?
Probably 50 or 60 people when we started.
So we just want to start with Ubiquity. What is Ubiquity? We kind of gave a little, textbook written up, paragraph of it on our first episode, but we wanted the founders to kind of really horn in on defining what it was and what you were looking for in 1973 that you wanted that was different from what was already on campus organizations.
Well, let me try to take a shot at that from this point of view. It's 1973. It's 5 years after the 1968 student takeover at Howard, where the term Black Power was coined by Kwame Ture and Stokely Carmichael, and they were just a very strong state of consciousness at Howard, which was really 68 was kind of a turning point for that. And so here we arrive, and the country is in a lot of turmoil. We're in Vietnam War. Richard Nixon is president, and we're on Howard's campus, which at the time that I arrived in 1971 was the most vibrant, incredible, dynamic place you could imagine. John Johnson from Ebony is speaking at Crampton, Kwame Ture, Dick Gregory, Angela Davis, everybody's coming through Howard. And so as in our first year, we get the footprint, and the plug is in the socket. We go into the second year, we're 19 years old then, and that's 72, 73. And so what we did is we looked around the campus, and a couple things came to mind. One is that we wanted to create a co-ed organization. Mm-hmm. Two is that we wanted to focus on a greater commitment to our consciousness and to our mandate. So at that time, Ubiquity required 10 community service hours a month. In addition to that, we wanted to acknowledge our African heritage. So if you look on Sullivan's shirt that he's wearing, you'll see the drums, and we were talking about the drums being basically.
There you go.
Yeah. And your shirt has a lot to do with our community. But more importantly, we wanted to try and have a better level of communication between men and women who ultimately, like you and I and all of us, are brothers and sisters. As a result, that's one of the most amazing things about it. And so we focused on leadership. And I would just say that the leadership and the achievement and accomplishments coming out of Ubiquity are immeasurable, because people take that consciousness and that notion of the self-determination and self-love and we built on it. That's why the For the Love of Each Other has so much meaning. So it's 1973 February. We're now in Meridian Hill. We've been gathering people, a lot of folk, East Coast, Philly, New York, Jersey, like these gentlemen here. And we're there in the reading room having a meeting. And we say, what's the name of the organization? And I think it was Barry White, we call him Barry BreDell, said Ubiquity, which it was happenstance, which means for the love of each other. And I tell you how God works. And so we said, what do you call people who want to join Ubiquity? And watch what comes out of that. The term apsidarian.
Apsidarian. Yep. Wow.
Beginner knowledge. So you got these 19-year-old, 18-year-old kids coming up with these concepts. These are empowering concepts about, what we should be doing. And then we said we were going to have an entry process, the trial period that you've experienced. And the trial period would not be dehumanizing. It would not violate. It would not involve the beating of people and that kind of thing. It would involve the trial period. Ubiquity has a trial period. And that trial period is probably a trial period. All of us are constantly on trial as a people. But Ubiquity's trial is very rigid in a cultural sense and in an intellectual sense. And in a sense that, we're moving, our theme is moving from me to we. And so that's it. And I'll just, one other thing about that is that it's foundational. And it's interesting too, because I've gone back now as a septuagenarian, I've gone back and looked at the Constitution that we wrote, that we thought about in 1973, 74 as young teenagers for the most part.
Wow.
It's amazing what we were aspiring to in the world that we searched for and that we wanted for ourselves. So that, Ada and Camille, is my story.
Now, let me ask a question.
Before you go to that, Camille, because before you go there, I wanted Barry, because Barry was the one that found the term ubiquity. Like, how did that come about? How did you discover that?
Sitting in Founders Library, going through encyclopedias and everything else, and we found some. I believe we found some African writing that was done by Africans, no book titles, just pages that were had strings on them, holding the pages together with rings. And we went through a lot of stuff. And at the time, we were trying to think of something that would have some Afrocentric ideas in it. And Roy Ayers had came out 2 years earlier with the album Ubiquity. It wasn't like that popped into my head first. It was that I was just searching and I found the encyclopedia and I looked at the term ubiquity. And when I looked at the term, what we were talking about, what Donald had vision and talked about to us, it came right to that word. And I said, you know what? I'm holding on to this. We're gonna do this. And we went to that meeting. They asked, and I stood up, and I said ubiquity, and everybody looked at me and said ubiquity, and then they started thinking about what the term meant, and it was like everybody said yes, ubiquity, and it was just awesome.
My question was, it was so funny because as we were talking with other Ubiquitarians, founders and early members about how everything came to be, and it all came back to, Donald just called. Donald had a vision. Donald called, and I want to know what that call was like. We didn't have phones then. I don't know, did they have a bullhorn? What was that call like?
Walking across campus, Donald noticed me, and we just started talking. It was always down.
Not you. What was the call like?
So Sully, what was your?
Sully.
what was your
Not you,
segue?
Ada M. I asked
No,
them,
I'm
not
saying.
you. I want
Well,
them.
let Sully talk first. It's okay
Well,
because Sully's important. Very important.
Think about the name of
I
the
want to know
award,
about.
though. You know,
We'll talk about that call. But Sully,
it's really quite synonymous of Donald. I mean, Donald's everywhere. And no, he was a presence. It was no ifs, ands, buts.
Was he
about it,
hollering at y'all? What?
And
No.
so we had a kinship. We had met, and Donald just had a vision. And when he has an opportunity to come to you and he's presenting something to you, it can be quite compelling, and he's very convincing. And I also look at the fact that this was a group of people very similar in backgrounds to myself. Coming up from an urban environment, we had a certain sort of way about I guess you could say, about ourselves.
style.
Yeah, I think we had.
Swag. We call it
style.
swag now.
Oh yeah, and the Philly contingent, absolutely.
Yes.
And you kind of migrated to that. At least I know I did. And so once he sat back and approached me, I was all in. I was like, yeah, this is going to be something quite exciting, and it certainly was. And to be able to see the growth of Ubiquity, the mere fact is, Donald saying 50 years, 52 years.
52 years.
That's,
I think that
that's
Sully,
nothing to sit back and just take lightly,
Camille, to your point, these relationships are, if you are gregarious, which I probably was overly gregarious and made friends. I mean, I was from Philly. I was young. I lived in Meridian Hill in 1971, 8 floors. It was a former hotel. There were 93 rooms on a floor.
Wow.
And 7 floors were occupied, 2 men, the balance women. So you start there with relationships, and you be to contrary to what people might think, all these people became your brothers and sisters. Sully lived in Meridian Hill. Sully is 6'6", right? I'm 6'8", right? No,
We got a story. We got a story. We got a story.
You got to understand, the dynamic. And so we also have all these young people who, as a rule, were first time going to college. There were exceptions, of course, but so many people who were experiencing college for the very first time, who connected style, energy, and then on the campus. I mean, a lot of these Ubiquitarians. I'll give you an example, because you're in class, you're already taking classes. I mean, the Black aesthetic, you got teachers like Hockey Babu, Oliver Killers. So you're meeting people who are thinking, and then and I worked in the library. I worked in the browsing room at the Howard University Library for 3 years, stacking books. So anybody's reading coming in, I'm meeting a lot of people. Ray McFarland, who became the second president of Ubiquity, was browsing books in the library, and he had a Philly cap on. So I say, "Yo, hey man, are you from Philly?" He says, "No, I'm from Charleston, South Carolina." I said, "I'm from yo." And lo and behold, this is the fascinating part. I said, "Ray, you need to check out our organization." Not only does Ray join, I'm in Ray's wedding years later. I mean, so the relationships, to your point, so you don't have to call people, but young Howard University students, I got 20 of them downstairs in my living room right now doing a film. They're curious, right? And so when you offer them something, they're thinking, and we were feeding each other's minds, because it wasn't just about me. It was about this notion of doing something different, vibrant, energetic, and people coming together, and then the fun began.
Yeah. Did you guys spend a lot of time on the Afrocentricity or the African influences in the beginning?
That's a great question. I think we created the foundation for that. And then as Ubiquity grew in age, it naturally, those seeds that we planted grew well beyond our expectation.
That's right. That's right.
So we adopted the Gusa Saba.
Whose idea was that? Whose idea was that? Because that was brilliant, because it has everything there, the principles, creativity, economics.
I don't know whose idea it was, but it came into being, and it's foundational for Ubiquity. Ubiquity is based on the 7 principles now, the Gusa Saba. But then at a certain point, years after we started, everybody in Ubiquity, once you join, you would get an African name. Wow. I mean, how incredible is that when you think about our states of mind and our notion of reclamation, our values? And so it's a beautiful thing.
That was started back then. I thought that was more recently started.
No, I said afterwards. It didn't start.
Oh,
yeah.
That's another seed that ultimately grew, And so
something else that is most beautiful is our logo.
Yeah.
Who drew it? Where did it come from?
Sully, did you have something to do with that?
I know Maurice did it. Maurice designed it, but he was.
Well, which logo are you talking
about?
What's on your shirt, Sully?
What's on my shirt?
Yeah, that one.
The drums, and the male and
the
female.
man and the woman.
Hey, you have something different on your shirt. Let me see it.
No, mine is.
That's the thing.
But notice that shirt, the leaves beneath those men and women.
Yes.
Which I think those symbols are antithetical, because we're so interested in trying to get men and women to come together. That was a hard thing, because you had Howard and brothers and sisters, girls and guys. So, but on a serious level, and the African leaves, though, constantly. So back to your point about the African centricity of it, Ubiquity was always African centric. But the development of the African centricity came through time as the organization aged.
Yeah, because Hassan said that there was a lot of partying. He said Ubiquity was all about parties when it first started. He said y'all used to have some great parties, and
well let's not get it twisted, right? Where were we, Sully? We were at Howard.
There was a seriousness of the brothers and sisters and family, but
that's for sure.
No. If you were at Howard, we were political, we were conscious, and Ubiquity we could be at the Ubiquity's tree. And we miss it. We didn't talk about the tree. Ubiquity started in February. It was charted May 5th by the university. You guys are legitimate. And the university planted a tree in the center of the yard. And we planted the tree.
The university planted the tree?
We didn't.
The tree was for us? The tree was ours?
No, it wasn't for the ancestors put it through the university for us, but
yes.
We didn't ask the university to plant it. Was just serendipitous, and it was in unclaimed territory because all the fraternities and sororities had their other trees. So we claimed the tree, and it has a story, So
wow.
But that tree is also connecting us to Africa. It's a symbol for us to our motherland.
Indeed.
So if you're on Howard's campus at any point in time, anybody, and you look at the center of the yard, and you're going to look for some red, black, and green,
there you will find it.
Right.
I want to ask Barry a question. What has been a Ubiquitarian? Has that affected your life at all? Your walk?
Oh yes.
In what way?
Walk. Okay. Go to my career. Neither one of them would have thought that I would have had the career that I had coming from Howard. But it affected me in a way that when I first started on the job, I was a uniform officer. My uniform was similar to the ones worn by Highway Patrol, because I was in a special unit. And the fact that I was a police officer now in North Philadelphia, things started happening. I started making arrests and everything, and I started noticing a pattern. The pattern was we were primarily going after our own people more than we would in the outskirts of North Philadelphia. Philly is broken up in so many different ways. And I was assigned to the 39th district, which is in North Philly, the heart of North Philly. But I used to like to go up to the 5th district because there was a lot of whites up there. And they were doing things to bring drugs and all this kind of nonsense into North Philadelphia. And I start targeting people. And that got me snatched out of uniform and put into a special unit. And once I got into the special unit, I was doing street corners. I was locking up young boys trying to make enough money to get Pampers for their kids to keep their women off their backs and just making money just to survive. And that started getting old. And I decided, no, I'm going to try out for this task force. And I got into this task force, and that led me to 28 years of being undercover, 20 of which was with the Drug Enforcement Administration, where I traveled all over the country. And I used to enjoy going up to the 19th floor of, like, say, the AAA building down in Center City and putting handcuffs on somebody that didn't look like us.
Easy, Barry, easy.
So
my ubiquity inside of me.
Yes, my ubiquity inside of me
made me say, I can't keep doing this to us.
That's
I got
right.
to go to the source. And I eventually got to the sources of a lot of that stuff.
Wow. So what was your major at Howard? What was your major?
I started off at the School of Architecture and Planning. And then I went to child development. And when I left there, I started working for the school board. I worked for an insurance company first, and then I started working for the school district, which, I was just going to, work with kids. And I went to federal grand jury and 18 weeks in federal grand jury. And I saw some things happening and said, no, I gotta change up.
Wow.
And then I went to law enforcement.
So Sullivan, I know you started off in accounting.
Right.
And you changed. What was your major? I mean, why did you change, and what happened with you in terms of the direction of what you're doing now for your career?
My personality, after putting in some time in studying accounting, wasn't really quite matching up to that sort of a profession. And I found that I was more of a people person, and I have more of an affinity for marketing. And most of my career did revolve around marketing. But I do want to also share one other little piece, given the question that you posed to my brother Barry about, how did this affect you later on in life? Donald doesn't even realize sometimes the effect that they can have on people. When I sat back and I was involved with Ubiquity, and the connection I have with Donald also morphed into another connection. And I don't want to get too much into the other organizations, but we were also members of another organization where a couple of Ubiquitarians also happened to be members, and that was Concerned Black Men. Donald had brought a chapter of Concerned Black Men down into DC, and we were doing mentoring work with young people, with a focus on young Black males. That thing stayed with me, to the point where I got involved with other organizations, even when I came back to Jersey City to do mentoring work with young men. And even to what I'm currently doing right now in terms of being a Sunday school teacher, where I really do try to focus on young men and trying to offer some assistance to them in terms of the journey that they're going on in life. So but the roots of all that really do go back to, Ubiquity.
Yep.
And Don, you went into legal. Was that your political science, your undergrad, your
I'm going to piggyback on Sully and Barry and how this thing plays out and why these relationships are so important. Because Barry worked in the 39th district in North Philly. I'm from North Philly. My uncle used to be the captain in the 39th district. 39th district, you don't understand. Now, you talk about Concerned Black Men. My uncle's brother was a lieutenant in internal affairs in the Philadelphia police. His other brother, my other uncle, this is Frank Patton, Charlie Patton, Donald Patton, was deputy fire commissioner for the fire department. These dudes, Donald and Charles, we call them Yock in particular, brought together policemen and firemen and started Concerned Black Men in Philly. What Sully is saying as a bridge, and it started out of Howard, and Barry's connected in Philly. My younger brother, who's also Ubiquitarian, was president of Concerned Black Men in Philly. So it kind of is that consciousness is emanating from Ubiquity. And we started Concerned Black Men in DC 45 years ago.
Wow.
Plus. And and the point is that we're always thinking about giving back, reaching back as we climb. And so all these guys, and many of them in DC, were judges and doctors and lawyers and business people. And our commitment was caring for our youth. So Sully, I appreciate the connection, but I think it's still ancestral, because I think our ancestors are constantly ringing bells in our ears and telling us, don't get drunk with the wines of the world. You know.
Indeed, I'm wondering, and I'm concerned. I'm loving all of this, and I love each of you for your commitment to our young brothers. And I wonder, especially being in law, legal, and law enforcement, how are we doing?
You know, I wanted to answer your question too, Ada. I majored in political science at Howard, and that was the thing. I would never tell the kids today to major in political science because it's a different world, but I minored in Black studies, and I want to go back to Philly because a lawyer in Philly that many people may not know, Cecil B. Moore, the lion of North Philly.
Cecil B. Moore. Oh my goodness.
This guy is he's a gladiator in a coliseum with 50 lions, and he fought so diligently for Black people. So that informed my life, and going through Howard and having some absolutely incredible professors. All of us have had just incredible. In fact, today is Hakeem Putin's birthday, or is it today or tomorrow? But one of my former professors at Howard, you know, and so many more, but none more than Charlie Fry, who was a Black Studies professor who taught us Black Studies at the Zenith. And so that actually, those combination of experiences informed me going to law school. So I did go to law school, and interesting from Ubiquity, again in Howard, I was at Santa Clara with 30 Blacks out of 900. 10 went to Howard.
Wow.
And two of us, Mike Espy, my classmate from Mississippi, he became the treasurer of the Black Law Student Association. I became the president. And then a year later, he became the treasurer of the predominantly white Student Bar Association. I became the president. So Howard gave us that, Ubiquity gave us that, and that energy, and Ubiquity informed not just our paths, but your paths and so many other Ubiquitarian paths.
I want to go back just in terms of just incredible. Thank you for sharing that all those connections. But I want to go back to the significance of trial period. Because people, first of all, people came to Ubiquity for different reasons. I mean, you all started it, but then there were, those that came after were for different reasons. It may be because they went to an all-white high school, all-white, whatever. They were craving Black, as maybe some people were craving family. But I want to know the significance of putting together trial, putting together the 7 weeks based around the principles, putting together the sponsor and what was that sponsor and special relationship. How did you all craft all of that so seamlessly just to make that work during that whole trial week process? And explain what the sponsor and special was, and what the 7 weeks
trial week.
Sir.
Oh, you only had 1 week?
Week? You said trial week. Trial is not a week.
No, did I say week? I'm sorry, it's weeks. 7 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, based on the 7 principles. But crafting that trial period, crafting the Constitution. I mean, I just want to talk about how. I mean, you all were 19 and 18 at the time. I mean, goddamn. I mean, were you like skipping classes to meet and deal with this at night at midnight when the fire was burning? I mean, what did you all do to come together and craft that and balance it with your schoolworks?
Ubiquity, we were in love.
With each other.
We were
for the love of each other. Yes.
Not just then, but now.
Yes.
And we were developing horizontal and vertical relationships that would last because we were based on a value system.
Yeah.
You know, so we had values, and so you are Ubiquitarian from 1985, but look at our relationship. You know, you just talked to Chandler. She's a Ubiquitarian from 2025. And look at the relationship. So the roots are there. But the thing about these organizations, and I only say this because you said something earlier, we were as socially interactive and friends. I mean, we had Ubiquitarians who had issues. We had somebody, the trial period is what we experienced in our system. You can't just have an organization where people walk through a revolving door because they won't value it. So we wanted to give people some threshold, some measure of commitment to our values. And they would have to show that. You know, there were things you have to do. There were things you have to learn. There are things you have to read. There were things you have to read. There were things you have to do. There were places you had to go. But reading and culture and brotherhood and sisterhood was critical. Because the other thing too is, and watch this. I mean, we had people. Remember Lynn Gibbs and Lynn was pregnant in school. Ubiquity was pregnant. Okay.
Yes, we had a baby.
And when later on, and after we finished, we had a Ubiquitarian trial period, and the young brother was murdered at Slow Hall.
Hall.
And so, the power of these sharing of experiences. We had a young brother, Eric King, who was an original Ubiquitarian. Ultimately, he tried to climb over the White House fence, and he had issues and ultimately died. So people struggle. So those bonds became very, very, very significant. But they came significant because we also had shared the trial period. There are things that we learned in trial. Ubiquity is not emulating a European thesis,
right?
Which is critical. We're talking about our own values. We're talking about our own history. We're talking about what's behind you for the love of each other, which is really strong, much needed value inside the Ubiquity equation and outside.